mission is pursuing justice with integrity, and that means providing fairness to defendants as well as advocating always for the victims and survivors of crime. And we have to do that work each and every day. And when I say pursuing justice with integrity, what that means is doing the right thing. Even if nobody's looking, I'm going to make sure that my office is doing the right thing. It means that, we have to make sure that we ensure public safety and seek punishment for certain crimes, but realizing also that punitive measures don't always advance justice. So that's how I inform and do this work. We want to focus our resources on the crimes and the individuals that most threaten our communities every day. And at the same time, create off-ramps and divert people from coming into the system in the first place. And we're talking about those people that are suffering, that bring them into the criminal justice system in the first place. Mental health, substance use disorders, poverty, homelessness, lack of education, no jobs. When those areas are not well resourced in our community, you know what happens? The default is NYPD and the district attorney's office. That should not be the case. The DA should be the last resort, not the first resort. And if we put the resources in our communities where they need to be to address those root causes of crime, then our job would be a little bit easier, although not non-existent, because there are still always going to be those people that no matter what we do, think that it's okay to cause harm to our communities, and we have to hold them accountable, and that is why we are here as well. So in January 2020, of course, there were criminal justice reforms in New York State. And I got to tell you, I was one of the DAs that raised my hand to say that I was in favor of those reforms. And you know why? It was those 13 years as an assistant DA when I prosecuted narcotics cases starting in the 1980s, when we threw everybody in jail, when it was nail them and jail them. That's how we thought we made communities safe. We know better than that now. But I was part of that process because that's how we did things. I know better now because of not only those 13 years, but then the 16 years on the bench when I had to adjudicate these criminal matters. And now as the district attorney, I know that there are better ways to do it. So when I took over, I already started trying to do reforms. So when they codified or brought those changes to bail and discovery and things like raise the age, I had already started trying to do that in my office to bring that fairness, my discovery policy, the bail policies, talking about least restrictive measures, and really trying to deal with people where they were and to deal with the root causes of the crime. So I was in favor of criminal justice reform, and I still am, because I think that we can have public safety and justice, public safety and reforms at the same time. We just have to be smart about it and be able to do it in the right way. And we can't do it without the resources in our communities. The Bronx is a community, and I'll say that other people may disagree, but we have the least resources possible. And right now, we have the highest crime rates in every single category. And as DA, I am so tired of being first in everything bad and last in everything good. So I work every day to try to change that dynamic. So in 2020, I announced my Bronx through Fair Justice policy, Safer Bronx through Fair Justice. And it was just that, to be able to concentrate on those who are causing the most harm, but also bringing fairness to the other individuals that find themselves in there. And of course, the summer of 2020 came, and there was a surge of violence and things of that nature, but I always never wanted to lose sight or take my eyes off the prize. Continue to have the safety, but also continue to be fair and not be misguided by, there's so much violence, so we have to go back to where we were. I don't want to do that. I want to see the resources come in so we don't have to go back there. But at the same time, I'm not going to apologize for being a district attorney who cares about the safety of victims in my community, nor am I going to be, and I'm unapologetic about being a DA that wants to bring fairness to those who actually come into the system. So I'm going to make sure I continue to be balanced. I announced a policy called PEACE, which is precision enforcement and community engagement. And that's how I'm trying to deal with the violence that we see in the Bronx now. That means prosecuting those that are bringing the most harm to the community. So prosecuting people that are trafficking guns. We brought down a case recently where young college students already in college selling 73 guns in the Bronx. Like, already in college, that's somebody that I wish we could have saved. But we're still going to work with that because, that doesn't make sense to be in college and then that's an entrepreneur. We need him to do that for good as opposed to evil, right? We have gang violence there. We took out another case, 30 gang members selling 30 guns, and these were community guns. The first case was the Iron Pipeline, bringing guns from the South. These 30 guns were circling in the Bronx, causing a lot of harm. Some of them already connected to shootings that were happening in the Bronx. And even today, I had a press conference today, another gang case where we had to take down 2 homicides, several shootings, so many innocent people being shot because of these guns. Everybody got a gun. So one of the things we really got to do is figure out where these guns are coming from and stop them from flowing into our cities in the first place. Because the last time I looked, there was no gun shops on 161st Street, okay? But meanwhile, we had a shooting in front of the courthouse 2 days last week. So we have to do, something about that. So we're using data as well to figure out who these trigger pullers are, where the hot spots are, and not only to know where those things are happening, but overlay that to see what resources are needed in that community so that we can stop it from happening. Looking at the schools, seeing if there are community centers, looking at the churches, just figuring out the healthcare centers. What is missing in those areas so that we could put the resources there so that we could change the way people are doing things. And part of the PEACE program, is using my crime victims advocates. They're going out and reaching out to these survivors because many people don't want to cooperate, but they need to be, and I'm so happy when people are courageous enough to cooperate with us because they care about their community and they want to see the people who are causing the harm out of their community. So we need the help. But when we can't, we do all that we can to bring the evidence that we can. But the Crime Victims Assistance Unit will help us with that. And then working with the Cure Violence Group and the crisis management teams, those who are out there, boots on the ground, in the street, meeting people where they are. How many times are they preventing one of those shootings from happening? We can't get that data, but I know, I've seen them at work. I've been out in the street with them marching in areas where these crimes are happening. And as people come in and they're shouting at the police and shouting at the DAs, I see them walk over to that young man or that young woman and calm them down and try to talk to them and get them to come into the fold, to get job training and things like that. So these things, can happen. These are the things that is going to help us cure the violence that we have. I have a Conviction Integrity Bureau that's dealing with exonerations, and we've exonerated people. But more recently, we looked at cases where a particular detective who's now charged with perjury had so many cases in the Bronx. I dismissed 500 cases that were connected to that detective. So that's how we're pursuing justice with integrity, making sure that we give second chances to those people. And lastly, I have a Community Justice Bureau that deals with alternatives to incarceration. And I like talking about alternatives to incarceration, but those are people who are already in the system. I want to talk about alternatives to violence that stops them from coming into the system in the first place. So I have a program that's with the Osborne Society that deals with some individuals who have been arrested for carrying guns. I was talking to the Youth Huddle individuals earlier, right there they are, see? And they were questioning me about that. What do you think about raise the age and kids carrying guns? And I explained to them, I said, look, people got to be held accountable. They got to know that there are consequences for carrying those guns. But I also know that some of them are carrying them because they're afraid. It's protection. So not every gun possession person is the same. Not every defendant is the same. And we look at each individual one and see how did they get there? What caused this person to come into the justice system in the first place? And we deal with them on that level. That way, justice looks different for every single case and every single person. There's no cookie cutter stuff involved. So my Community Justice Bureau is working with Osborne to give the alternatives to violence training, counseling for the trauma that so many people have experienced that have been untreated that causes them to cycle into violence, job readiness, all of those things. And we want to use that as a model so that even if you decide to pick up a gun once, that you never do it again. So that's the kind of work that I want to continue to do. So, you know, in conclusion, look, we have the Saturday Night Lights program. We need to open community centers in our community at night to give our kids something to do. And I'm working with the community. I want to hear your ideas on how we should do it. So, you know what? This is the mission that I've had since I came in. This is the mission that I will continue to have. And I know that we can have public safety and reform at the same time. And I look forward to working with every community to make sure that we're able to get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, District Attorney Clark. Before we go to our next speaker, brothers and sisters, we want to just take a moment and have the president and founder of the National Action Network come to you, the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much, and all of you, some of you been here both days, all days, and we are very glad that you've taken seriously this convention. Let me thank all of those on the panel that have come and that have shared with us and those that will. And let me personally thank one who helped to shape and mold this organization and this movement, who's worked tireless and who has never been given the credit he is due, and that's Attorney Michael Hardy. Second thing, I want to piggyback off of our great Bronx DA. Everybody's case is not the same, and everybody that has been done wrong needs and deserves to be heard. Now, one of the things, my friend Melinda, I got two cases I'm gonna bring to you. They're sitting in the front that I have had a preliminary checkout. This brother and these brothers, I want you to look into, and I'm gonna personally talk to you and them about it, because sometimes people's anger masks their pain. It hurts to do 32 years in jail for something you didn't do. And then people want you to come out and act good behavior. It's hard to have good behavior when you sit up every day knowing you shouldn't be there. And all they want is a fair hearing. It hurts when they give a co-defendant lie on you and you end up with something and you get caught up in bureaucracy. And only somebody at the top can reach through the bureaucracy, and all we want is fairness. And so I'm taking these two brothers' case. I promised them I would do it, and that's why I'm here. And I'm gonna sit with you on it. And I don't want you to do them no favors. I want you to do them justice. That's all they want. And I want to speak up for them, because somebody had to speak up for me. So we're gonna talk with Sister Katz and y'all. We're gonna get that straight, and we ain't got to protest her. She hears real clear English, and we'll look into whatever it is, and we're gonna try to get this straight for them. The last thing I want to say, which is not on the program, this is from me and Nan, is that I am, and I'm saying this on camera, I am totally and adamantly against the media kangaroo court on DA Alvin Bragg. If no one will stand up, this organization will stand up. He has done nothing that he did not campaign on. He the people voted for him, campaigning on it, and let him do his job. There are some that cannot get in their head that a brother from Harlem now is the Manhattan District Attorney. And he has not talked to me about it. He has not met with me about it, and none of that. But I just think right is right. I've been in media assaults. Everybody up here has been in media assaults of some kind. If not, they got one coming. So I've been there and always wondered, am I out here by myself? And I want him to know, D.A. Bragg, you're not by yourself. I think it's important that when we do that, we do it right and we do it public, because we want them to stand up for us. If there's an injustice, we want them to stand up for us. So when they're being treated unjust, we need to stand up for them. Is that right? Whether it's Melinda Katz wrongly, they jump on her about cases, whether it's any of them, Eric, we need to be even Steven. You can't ask for justice if you're not going to do justice. And I think that it's important because we put them there to represent right. They're not the enemy. We can all be one. Nobody I respect more than Victor Pate, who's going to be doing a program tomorrow. And people know, I got people in my family I know went to jail for things they didn't do, but they didn't know how to address it or couldn't afford the right defense, couldn't get the right lawyer, or lawyers that would trade on them. And then some were guilty. Some folk were guilty now. Everybody in here wasn't innocent. You know, when I started Politics Nation, I used to do a commercial and about a boy that used to always sneak in the refrigerator and eat blueberry pie. And Mama came in one day and said, "Did you eat that blueberry pie?" I said, "No." He said, "Why you got all that blueberry around your face?" Some of y'all got blueberry around your face. Some of y'all did that now. And it's better to cop that you did it, get your whipping. I knew I'd get a whipping for taking the blueberry pie, but I had the whipping coming. So I want us to bring our community to a new order. We are not the personification of criminals. They act like all of us are guilty till proven innocent. We need the proper way of being innocent till proven guilty. And if we're guilty, treat us like anybody else that's guilty. Don't give us 30 years for a 1 year thing, but don't give us any time if we are innocent. And that's what this is about. So that's why we want to have these forums, so we're respectful, because we are not criminals. We are not hoodlums. We're not thugs that they project. We are law-abiding citizens that want to be treated in the same way. Justice is all we want. And again, I want to thank the DAs. A lot of DAs would not have even come. People in law enforcement would not have even come and risk being in front of all of y'all. Y'all are intimidating. A whole room full of y'all. I have to take 2 breaths to come myself. But they come because they want to serve. Let's help them serve right and equally and fairly, because we got to break this cycle up. Enough is enough is enough. All right. Thank you, Brother Hardy.
That's our president and founder, the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton, who I'm sure many of you know is also probably one of the greatest legal minds in the nation. So let's give him another hand. All right. Next up is going to be our friend from the city of brotherly love, the great city of Philadelphia, District Attorney Lawrence S. Krasner. who was officially sworn in for a second term as Philadelphia's 26th District Attorney in January of this year. Throughout his 34-year career, D.A. Krasner has demonstrated a steadfast commitment to social justice, stepping up at numerous times in the past to offer his services for free to defend protesters involved with movements like ACT UP, Black Lives Matter, Progressive Clergy with Power, Casino-Free Philadelphia, DACA Dreamers, Decarcerate PA, Anti-Gun Clergy, with Heeding God's Call, Anti-Poverty and Homelessness Advocates, and with the Kensington Welfare Rights Union, Occupy Philly, and Reclaim Philadelphia, Grannies for Peace, and many, many more. Early in his career, Mr. Krasner was a federal public defender before going into private practice as a civil rights and criminal defense attorney. In his last job before being elected, he served of counsel to the law firm of Greenblatt, Pierce, Font, and Flores. Mr. Krasner was born in '61 in St. Louis, son of a World War II veteran and author and father, and his mother is the evangelist, so he's at home. Attended public school in St. Louis and Philadelphia areas and earned his undergraduate degree in Chicago, his law degree in Stanford. He lives in Philadelphia with his wife, and he has 2 adult sons. We are pleased to have him. Now, some of you may say, we've got the 5 district attorneys of New York County. Why did we throw Philly? Well, Philly really is our sister city. But for those of you in social justice, and I know you all are out there, Larry Krasner was a superstar. So here we go. We've got one here at National Action Network. Let's welcome.
Thank you all for allowing me to be here. I want to thank Reverend Sharpton. Thank you, Reverend. And I also want to thank General Counsel Hardy, but I have to thank somebody else because I am, in fact, from Philly. That's right. I want to thank our National Action Network Philadelphia Chapter Chair, Paula Peebles. And I also want to make sure that you all remember, as I give my condolences to Paula Peebles, Philadelphia Chapter President Matthew Smith, who just passed away. All right. I would do you a disservice if I did not talk directly to you. Number one, let's blow something up right now. This notion that reform prosecution causes crime is a lie. The notion has been studied by John Pfaff, that's P-F-A-F-F, a rather famous economist and law professor at Fordham University in your fair city. And Mr. Pfaff determined, looking at the 50 largest cities in the United States, that there was absolutely no correlation whatsoever between progressive prosecution and this increase in crime. And we cannot lose sight of that because the tactics of the enemy are clear. They are fear, and they are to resort to individual examples. It is to resort to Willie Horton, individual examples instead of facts and truth. You want another fact? How about this one? The most murderous states in the United States are Trump states. And it is not by a little. The rate of murder per capita in the states that supported Donald Trump is 40% higher than it is in the other states. So excuse me for a moment, pardon me. When Donald Trump wants to talk about law and order, should I forget that he is a serial sexual predator? Should I forget he is a traitor who led an insurrection? Should I forget his peculiar love for Vladimir Putin because of his financial problems? Why is it the people who want to keep hollering law and order are crimey? What is that? All right, let's go back 55 years, because I'm 61. I'm old enough to remember this. You go back and look at the video of the 1968 political convention when Richard Nixon, a criminal, and Spiro Agnew, another criminal, got up to explain why they had to be in leadership of the United States. And what did they say? They said, these big cities are lawless. These big cities are lawless. And we all know exactly what they were really saying. What they were really saying is that diverse big cities in America are lawless. Where are we now? 55 years later, and the Republicans have not forgotten their playbook, have they? So let us just get that right out of the way. All of this nonsense coming from tabloid press at times, all of this nonsense that you may hear. If the word lawless is coming out of your mouth in reference to a large American city with a diverse population, then you need to check yourself, because you sound like Richard Nixon. Now the good news is that if you actually look at the data about what is happening in this country, you see something fascinating. Not only that progressive prosecution or reform prosecution is succeeding, and I'll give you that in a minute, but you're going to see that it's actually inseparable from saving democracy in the United States. I know that's a big claim, so give me a second here. 15 years ago, you essentially had no progressive prosecutors in the U.S. and no people living in jurisdictions where there was a progressive prosecutor. 2 years ago, you had 10% of the United States in those jurisdictions. That's a lot of people. That is 35 million people. Now, after George Floyd, you have 20.1% of the United States population living in a jurisdiction that has elected and in almost every instance re-elected a progressive prosecutor. That is 75 million people. So why is it that every time a reform prosecutor or progressive prosecutor comes up for re-election, for example, Kim Foxx in Chicago, who was outspent 5-1, or George Gascon, who had been a prosecutor in San Francisco and became the prosecutor in the largest criminal justice jurisdiction in the United States, Los Angeles, or when I came up for re-election, why is it that all these national forces go after us and all of the media says, oh my goodness, it looks like the end of progressive prosecution? Why is that? What happens is Kim beats the daylights out of her opponent, outspent 5-1. Gascon wins easily. I won with 2/3 in the primary and 72% in the general election, and then the press gets quiet. It was all the Waterloo of progressive prosecution before you won big, and then when you win big, it all gets kind of quiet. Well, I think we have all been here before. Part of what I had to do when I was defending so many protesters and activists as what was really a professional hobby, during the 35 years I've been in criminal justice, I spent many of those years defending groups like Black Lives Matter and others when they would protest. Why? Because DAs thought it made sense to prosecute them for crimes instead of helping them to achieve changes in society by nonviolent direct action. That is actually what traditional prosecutors thought made sense. So here's the deal. If progressive prosecutors, reform prosecutors, can go from nowhere to 10% to 20% of the U.S. population, if they can double in 2 years, they should all really form their own political party, because they're doing better than the Democrats or the Republicans, aren't they? What needs to happen as we try to save a democracy, as one party tries to run this country by minority rule, by stealing people's right to vote, what needs to happen is not that we walk away from our values. It's not that we walk away from ending mass incarceration. What we need to do is double down. And I'll tell you why. Donald Trump is really good at getting Duck Dynasty to vote. He is really good at getting hillbillies who got white hoods in the closet to vote. They weren't voting before because the candidates weren't crazy enough. He said, I'm crazy enough. Let's go. So they're coming out. And what does our mainstream Democratic Party, my party, the party I ran under, the party I voted for every time, have to say? They have to say, well, we're a little bit like the Republicans. Is that good enough? No. Every time that I have run in Philadelphia, there has been a very large increase in the number of voters coming out. And if you look at other progressive jurisdictions, or if you look at issues that go to criminal justice reform, what you will see is that when it's on the ballot, reluctant voters who understand criminal justice come out, and they come out in big numbers. Well, Trump's got his big numbers of crazy people. Why would we not want to get out big numbers of people who are reluctant voters but would be excited to vote about things that they care about? Why would we not want that? And we better do it quick, because the fact is that if we do not keep criminal justice reform on the ballot and thereby bring out those reluctant votes, what's going to happen is these Republicans are going to take away everybody's right to vote and make sure that they are in power forever. They're not playing, and we should not be playing either. It does not make sense. It does not make sense to lick our finger, hold it in the air, say, which way is the wind blowing? Oh, I'm feeling a little conservative-y today, and think that that's going to do anything to beat a party that figured out how to turn out the crazies. That does not make any sense. I'll give you an example in Philly of a very, very savvy city council person. She decided we had to put a ballot referendum on our local ballot, and the ballot referendum said, essentially, police should not do illegal stop and frisk. Well, they never should do it because it's illegal, right? It wasn't adding anything to the law. The law was what it was, but she knew what she was doing. She knew that if she put that on the ballot, she would get reluctant voters to come out and vote for it because they cared about it even more than they cared about some other candidates. And Joe Biden should be saying thank you very much, because Pennsylvania went for Biden, Philly went for Biden bigger than ever before, and that ballot referendum was part of how it gets done. Make no mistake, this supposed perception that criminal justice reform has caused crime is not the people's perception. It is not the people's perception. It is institutions that are not ready for change, and we're having to drag them around like bags of sand until they finally start to listen to the people. All right, final point, and then I'll sit down and get out of the way, as they say in church, so you can all worship. So, a lot of times I think the issue we come to is people don't really understand what a progressive prosecutor or a reform prosecutor is. It's really not that complicated. It's really pretty straightforward. We think the system should have integrity. We think it should be accurate. We think we should focus on the most serious crimes and put our resources there and stop spending all of our time on turnstile jumping and jaywalking and broken taillights. It's not that complicated. The average police budget spends only 4% dealing with homicides. Does that make sense to you? That's because they got 96% going for other stuff, a lot of which matters much less than homicides. What is the result? The result in Philadelphia of an antiquated way of doing policing, and I do believe that we need police, and I believe we need jails. I just don't think we need as many jails or as many prisons. I think they should be reserved for that limited number of people who are truly dangerous. But what does it mean in Philly? And here's where we get at the really ugly truth. The solve rate, the rate at which crimes are solved, non-fatal shootings in Philly last year was 17%. 83 out of 100 shooters were not caught. The only cases I even got to touch and handle were those 17% that were solved. When you look at homicide by gun, and here there are more resources, better detectives, only 28%. 72% of people who killed somebody with a gun got away with it. And why is that? It is because we need to spend our money on policing on things that work, and we haven't done it. We spend it on things that are political and serve the interests of people who are trying to get ahead. Example? Okay, you ready for the real crazy before I actually do sit down? The loudest advocate for putting $50 million into a state-of-the-art forensics lab in the city of Philadelphia is the progressive prosecutor who supposedly doesn't like police. Well, let me tell you what I like. I like solving crimes. I think that people who actually did the crimes should be caught, and they should be appropriately accountable. And I think innocent people should not sit in jail for somebody else's crime. That's what I think. We have yet to hear the police union say one word in favor of forensics. I tell you what they do say: we want no accountability and we want more compensation. That is what we want. I am suggesting to you as I sit down that the prosecutors and the police that you need are the ones who are most interested in modern techniques that tell us the truth and allow us to get justice, as opposed to using the whole system for self-advancement and politics. Thank you very much for the chance to speak to you.
All right, thank you, District Attorney Krasner. So we're going to go out to Richmond County. How many of you know where Richmond County is? No, Richmond County is the borough of Staten Island. And we're going to go out to Staten Island, and we're pleased to have with us today the District Attorney for Richmond County, Michael E. McMahon. And he, upon being elected in 2016, made it a priority to transform the Richmond County District Attorney's Office into a modern prosecutor's office focused on precision prosecution, problem solving, crime prevention, and bridge building between law enforcement and the communities it protects. DA Mann has utilized his broad and deep experience in the law and public service to implement and pursue issues he promised Staten Islanders to address, from the opioid epidemic to traditional street crime and gun violence, from domestic violence to economic crime, from crimes against our children to assaults on our women and seniors, and creating new units to protect animals. DA McMahon continues to work with partners in law enforcement, especially police officers and detectives, to drive down crime numbers and keep Staten Island safe. Prior to becoming a district attorney, he served in a number of other public offices on the city, state, and federal level, including the United States Congress. He is born and raised in Staten Island in the Stapleton neighborhood. His wife is Supreme Court Justice Judith McMahon, and they also have two lovely children. Let's welcome District Attorney from Richmond County, the great borough of Staten Island, Michael E. McMahon.
Thank you very much, Michael Hardy, and good afternoon, everyone. As you heard, I'm Michael McMahon from that far, far, far away place known as Staten Island. In fact, that's interesting. I bet you've all spent a lot more time in Philadelphia than you have in Staten Island. But I wanted to be here to show you the respect that I have for this organization, for your chairman of the board, Franklin Richardson, for your president and founder of NAN, Reverend Sharpton, for your vice chair of NAN, your board of directors, Jennifer Jones-Austin, and my very own Cynthia Davis, who heads up the NAN office in Staten Island, together with, in conjunction with Reverend Bishop Victor Allen Brown from the Mount Sinai United Christian Church, and I thank them for the great work that they do every day for the people of Staten Island. We're here today to continue the important conversation around public safety and preserving justice for everyone, irrespective of race, creed, gender, or wealth, or any other identifying factor, and other significant criminal justice issues, all of which have been a growing concern for New Yorkers everywhere. And this difficult yet crucial discussion has only intensified in recent months, following a series of horrifying incidents which have gotten a lot of press but have also gripped our city, including just last week, the fatal shooting of 12-year-old Kadeh Lewin as he sat in a car with relatives in Brooklyn, or just a few months prior, when 19-year-old Crystal Bayron Nieves was taken by gun violence while working at a Burger King in East Harlem. And sadly, their tragic stories are becoming too common in our city, with innocent New Yorkers being caught in the crossfire of erupting gun violence and gang violence on our streets. So understandably, New Yorkers throughout the 5 boroughs have had to grapple with the fear and uncertainty these incidents have and other troubling crimes have brought to their communities, their streets, and even their commutes to work. And as such, those of us in law enforcement and elected office are called to do more to address the immediate threat that gun violence and crime poses to our communities, as well as to the overall quality of life in New York. And this is where Mayor Adams has stood in great leadership for our city. But at the same time, we are cognizant of the immense responsibility that comes with protecting the public, and we understand that the best and most effective way to keep our streets safe is by earning the trust of the communities we serve. In recognizing the past mistakes of over-policing, mass incarceration, and wrongful convictions which have brought to the lives of too many New Yorkers fear and hardship, particularly in the minority communities, we therefore recognize the need to protect our communities. It must coincide with the incredibly noble goal of preserving equal justice under law. And so public safety depends on striking the correct balance between these two goals and moving forward with the complete support of the community. Let me repeat that, if I may. Public safety depends on striking the correct balance between these two goals and moving forward with the complete support of the community. And so what does this balance mean exactly? Is it just a word? No. It means creating an environment for Staten Islanders, in my case, and for all New Yorkers and all Americans to live and work in safety while not sacrificing the constitutional and civil rights granted to every American. It means holding serious and violent criminals accountable for victimizing innocent New Yorkers, while at the same time providing crucial resources and life-changing opportunities to address the root causes of crime, from mental illness to substance abuse and poverty. It means getting guns off our streets through precision policing and prosecution, while engaging with our youth to address their personal issues and stress to them the dangers of carrying and using firearms. It means dedicating resources, like which I started in Staten Island, a conviction review unit, to correct past mistakes of the criminal justice system. And most of all, it means building trust between law enforcement and the communities we serve. Now, I'm proud to say that last year, most major crime categories were down on Staten Island, although they're still well too high. And overall, by 10%, shootings were down in our borough, even though they were up in the rest of the city. And the steep decline that we saw from 2020, however, when shooting incidents and victims were up almost 100%. Shooting victims up more than 100% from the previous year. And so while we can confidently say we have made tremendous progress as a city in addressing gun violence under Mayor Adams' leadership, we still remain seriously concerned by the incidents of gun violence we are seeing on Staten Island and elsewhere, and especially among teenagers and young people. And more must be done to ensure that we are simply not sweeping those troubling incidents under the rug, but instead engaging our youth and equipping them with the tools to make the right decisions and succeed. The fact remains that in 2021, 20% of the people who were arrested for gun possession on Staten Island were between the ages of 14 and 17, and over 30% of the shooting victims were under the age of 20. In short, we must do more to keep our children safe. And so my office continues to take violent crime as well as quality of life offenses incredibly seriously, but we also recognize that incarceration is not the answer. And we are proud to offer a wide array of diversion programming for defendants to address the underlying causes of their criminal behavior. Get this, in Staten Island now, you know, Staten Island, you remember? In fact, in Staten Island, over 40% of all dispositions from my office involve defendant enrollment in diversion programs, not arrest, drug treatment. Not arrest, mental health services. Not arrest, vocational services. Not arrest, community action services. And let me just say this, for a second, you know, the issues that we talked about, and Darcel, D.A. Clark talked about this very eloquently as well as my colleagues have as well. The issues that drive crime in so many instances, mental health, poverty, education, vocational training, addiction. We had in Staten Island a terrible addiction crisis owing to opioid addiction and now fentanyl. I want to know what the legislature and the administration are doing about those things. Because if a young person, because of those issues, makes a decision and commits a crime, is arrested for a crime, that means our system failed because of those reasons. And so the next time you see a legislator doing a press conference, do me a favor. Say, instead of doing a press conference, why don't you go to your legislature in Albany or the city council and have a hearing and find out what's going on and do something meaningful about it. Because for too long, these problems end up in the lap of the police and the prosecutor, and enough is enough. I'm sorry, I had to make that. You heard, I was a councilman, I was a congressman, and it's sometimes I just wonder why they don't do more about it. So just briefly again about Staten Island. Ensuring fairness in the criminal justice system extends beyond the courtroom, and that's why I'm proud to say that my office has also expanded our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. To name a few of our most recent efforts, let me just say this. When I took office in 2015, just 36% of the leaders in my office were women and minorities, and today 55% of the leadership are women and minorities. That's right, Staten Island. A drastic change in a relatively short window of time. We struck up a partnership with Mind Open Learning Strategies, a Staten Island-based consulting organization, to provide training and coach each Staten Island DA's office staff member in DEI strategies and efforts. I've named the Chief Diversity Officer, and we've expanded by 200% the number of EEO counselors in our office, and we've tried to bring this enlightened approach to how we work together and the work that we bring to the community. At the same time, we are also increasing our efforts to raise awareness about hate crimes, and our Staten Island Hate Crimes Task Force continues to work diligently to secure the right of every person to live their lives free from bias and hate. In conclusion, let me say this, that despite the many challenges we face, I am proud that my office, the Staten Island DA's office, has adapted and persevered and modernized. We have remained vigilant and consistent in our dedication to the rule of law, especially when it comes to protecting the rights of each individual on Staten Island, as well as the protection of the victims of crime and the overall improvement of public safety on Staten Island. Above all, my job as district attorney is to protect the people of our community, and at the same time, especially vulnerable citizens and the young people. And I look forward to continuing this important conversation and engaging with everyone gathered here today who's concerned about public safety and equal justice in our city and Staten Island. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you, District Attorney McMahon. We're going to go to the great borough of Queens, County of Queens. Melinda Katz is the first woman to serve as Queens County District Attorney, elected in November of 2019. Born and raised in Queens, she is a product of our public school system there and has been a public servant for more than 20 years. After graduating with honors from the University of Massachusetts, D.A. Katz attended St. John's Law School. She interned in the U.S. Attorney's Office and worked with the Legal Aid Society. As a member of, and she served not only in Albany as a state assembly person, she served on the city council, and she was also the Queens Borough President before being elected district attorney. As Queens Borough President, she worked to seal certain misdemeanor and nonviolent felony convictions and to grant warrant forgiveness in order to promote second chances in communities most affected by mass incarceration. As district attorney, she has also ended the practice in the district attorney's office, the long-standing practice of requiring defendants to waive their 880 rights. It's a legal thing in New York where you're made, when you're waiting on a grand jury, in order to make a plea deal, they try to make you waive your rights to a grand jury. And she ended that in order to initiate plea bargaining. And at the same time, she launched initiatives to aggressively pursue and prosecute human trafficking, child abusers who prey on elderly society, and has been focused in having a powerful wrongful conviction review unit in the district attorney's office. Her father, David, was the founder and conductor of the Queen's Symphony Orchestra. Her mother was the founder of the Queen's Council for the Arts, and she's raising her children in the home she grew up in. Let's welcome our Queens District Attorney, Melinda Catt.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Mr. Hardy, thank you for that kind introduction and for all that you do on behalf of justice and equality in this great country. Thank you to the Reverend Al Sharpton. He is a great advisor, and I thank him for all the work that he has done. And generations are better for the work that Reverend Al Sharpton has done for this country. And I do want to thank my colleagues who are here today. I am still trying to figure out Michael McMahon's statement on behalf of the City of New York and Staten Island. And we always want to welcome Alvin Bragg. His constituents voted for him. He's going to do a great job. And I want to also, if I can, thank all those that put this together. I think it is an amazing event that you have. I came to the gala last night. I got to put on a nice dress, makeup for a little change. You know, it was very nice to be here. But the conversations you're having are real. And the conversations have to be had. And there are so many people that don't want to have these conversations. You know, Reverend Sharpton said, we all showed up, there's 5 DAs. And Larry Krasner from all the way from Philadelphia. It took me just as long to get here from Queens. But we're all here because we know how important it is that these conversations exist. And, you know, today there's been a lot of discussion, and I do want to agree with my colleagues, and I'm going to tell you this. It is a lie when people say to you that you can't have accountability in the courtroom and equity in the courtroom and safe streets. You can have both. We prove it every single day. It is true that you can have accountability, but let me tell you something. Accountability comes in a lot of forms. Accountability for drivers of crime and those individuals that bring guns in from Alabama and Tennessee, and they bring them up the iron pipeline and they want to sell them to our children. Accountability there, holding them accountable, trying them, prosecuting, and convicting at the same time, because you can't sell guns in the city of New York to our kids. But accountability can also be diversion. Accountability could be you need mental health services, you need drug rehabilitation services, you need a job. And that can also be the way people are held accountable. Equity and justice in the courts and safe streets. You can do both. It is amazing to me when I'm out there in the community and they say that that conversation can't happen simultaneously. It is not true. At a time when you're having fatal overdoses and fentanyl is hitting the streets, let me just say, fentanyl looks, tastes, smells like a regular pill sometimes, an oxycodone pill sometimes, codeine sometimes, heroin, cocaine. It is killing our kids on the street because people are overdosing, not realizing what it is. It is holding those people, individuals that are accountable, that are selling them to our kids, while making sure that we have rehabilitative services and restorative justice, and making sure that we have clinics and drug rehab at the same time. It means making sure that we don't have guns on the street, prosecuting those that come from the other states and sell them to our kids, making sure that we hold accountable those, the new thing now, ghost guns. Those individuals that are literally making guns from 100 vendors that they're finding on the internet and having the pieces delivered to their homes and in their apartments, and they're making guns and they are selling them and they're using them in crimes. It means making sure that we attack that, make folks accountable that are doing that, while also making sure that we fund cure violence and violence interruption programs and youth wraparound services, because the safest streets in the city of New York is when our youth are not picking up a gun in the first place. That's how you make the place a safer place. So, it also means, it's interesting we brought up conviction integrity. So I have a saying in my office, it's brave justice. It's a steady hand during turbulent times. Because you can read the newspapers and just think everyone's on one side or the other. It isn't true. In reality, we all do justice the way we believe it to be. We all make sure that our policies and programs are followed in the office. And brave justice means making very difficult decisions at times. It also means an equal hand. I remember one week in Queens County last year, a few months ago now, where on conviction integrity, I had a man who was in jail for 31 years in Queens County. We uncovered new evidence. We interviewed 30 witnesses. We went through thousands of documents, and it was my opinion that if the jury had known all the evidence that I knew now, with the new evidence that I uncovered, they would have found the person in a different verdict. They would have found him innocent. So this man went through a federal habeas corpus. He went through state court. He went through 2 previous district attorneys, and then I got here. And I met with him before we vacated the conviction. He walked in handcuffs. He walked out in a business suit. And I met with him. And I met with him after going through all of this history with him, and I don't know if I'm telling tales out of school. I said to him, I'm just so sorry it took me so long to get here. Yes. And that was the same week that we had gang violence and gun violence and shootings in Queensbridge and Ravenswood. You know what the shootings were about? It wasn't about money. It wasn't about drugs. It was about real estate. It was those that were driving crime in the community, and it was about real estate. And so the same week that this gentleman walked out of jail, or walked out of prison, we did a 141-count indictment against 28 people who were making folks unsafe in their own homes every single day. And we indicted them and made sure that they are going to be held accountable for their crimes. And I went there that weekend. I went to Queensbridge that weekend, and you know what was happening? Is the seniors were coming up to me and saying, thank you. You're giving us a breath. And we're able to come to the park. I can take my kid to his friend's house. We can go to church. Thank you. It's an even and a steady hand, and I think that is crucial when it comes to criminal justice, and when it comes to criminal justice, and when it comes to criminal justice reform, a steady hand. One other thing that we've been working on, a few other things, but one I want to mention, Rikers Island. Nobody's mentioned it yet. I want to mention Rikers Island. We are a first-class city in the United States of America. We can't have a detention center that at least is humane, that gives services that are required, that gives mental health services, that gives drug rehabilitation services, who teaches people a vocation and how to get a job. Nobody gets out of Rikers better than when they went in, which is why I do believe that there are times you need that, but you need it to be humane, and we need to fix it, and we need to make sure that we are a first-class city with a first-class place to have a detention center, which is why we rely so much, by the way, in Queens County on diversion every time we possibly can. But we have a real problem in this city, ladies and gentlemen, and that is gun violence. There is just no doubt about it. And we've talked about precision policing today. So because of the ghost gun issue, we actually just created a few months ago, my God, it's almost a year now, a crime strategies unit. And that is a unit that uses technology in order to find individuals that are buying parts of guns from throughout the country. And since then, we have found 7 homes, basement apartments, Apartments right next to where you're living, where there are people that are just building guns in there. And so we have to realize that what used to be just an iron pipeline, right, from Tennessee and Virginia and Alabama, and they take these iron guns up the iron pipeline and sell them to our kids, they're now a polymer pipeline. They're plastic guns. And they are harder to detect, they are harder to find, they are harder to match on ballistics, and that is an issue that we are dealing with every single day in Queens County. So I got to Michael Hardy. Mr. Hardy mentioned the 18080. I'm going to tell you what that is. Before I got to be the district attorney of Queens County, which unbelievably, it's almost 3 years now, there was this policy in the office that said, if you don't waive your grand jury right, you get arrested on a felony. If you don't waive the right to a grand jury, we're not going to give you anything but a top count plea. Nothing. On day one, I changed that policy. And it was interesting. And it was interesting to me because on day one, Mr. Hardy, if you remember, on day one, the bail laws changed, the discovery laws changed, and I got rid of that policy. And the discussion was, can you really do all three at the same time? And I said, with the bail laws and the discovery laws changing, nobody will hardly notice. But it was a big deal, because now you could waive your right, not waive your right, get your constitutional right to a grand jury, and still be able to get a lower plea if that's what you desire. So with that, COVID hit 2 months in. We still managed to create a Violent Criminal Enterprise Bureau, Bureau of Hate Crime. So if you're targeted because of your race, religion, who you love in this world, that there were consequences for that. But the best thing we did in our office, I have to say, is community outreach. We started a partnership. My office has done over 1,000 events in a year in the community. I have gone out. I go to basketball games, I go to food giveaways, I go to all of these forums, and people say, why are you here? And I say, because the first time someone sees a district attorney shouldn't be when we're coming to get them. The first time they see a district attorney is when I'm trying to keep them out of the criminal justice system to begin with. So I am proud of the work that our community partnership does. They have done thousands of events. Colleen Babb, my executive over the division, is here with me today. She came here, then she's going to the Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus up in Albany, but she agreed to stay here with me today just to be here. And we reach the youth. We make sure that the youth do not pick up the same guns that we just got off the street. It isn't perfect. We do our best. You can have equality in the courtroom, and you can have safe streets. Don't let anybody lie to you that you can't. Thank you.
Thank you, District Attorney Katz. All right, we're in the borough of Manhattan, County of New York, and so we're coming home to the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin L. Bragg, Jr. Now, you know, technically, Alvin is the 37th district attorney in New York County, but as District Attorney Clark and I were talking before the program, I think it's like if you go back, and some of you probably don't even know these names, you might be too young, but Thomas Dewey, Hogan, Morgenthau, and Vance. So you've had about four district attorneys that preceded Alvin in the last 80 years or so. So Alvin was elected and sworn into office January of 2022. And of course, he is the first African-American male to assume the office of district attorney in New York County. Alvin has District Attorney Bragg has served in the U.S. Attorney's Office and also in the Attorney General's Office of New York State. In the Attorney General's Office of New York State, he eventually rose to Chief Deputy Attorney General, overseeing 1,500 people in a budget of $225 million. The office's criminal and civil investigations, litigation, including healthcare fraud, public corruption, narcotics trafficking, wage and hour investigation, tenant harassment, securities fraud. In addition, he served as the first chief of a special unit that investigated deaths caused by police conduct. Alvin is a graduate of Harvard and also a graduate of Harvard Law School. He clerked for the Honorable Robert Patterson in the Southern District, was a visiting professor of law and co-director of the Racial Justice Project at New York Law School, some of our alma maters here. And Alvin is a former member of the Board of Directors of the New York Urban League, a Sunday school teacher, a proud member of National Action Network. Let's welcome District Attorney Alvin Bragg.
Good afternoon, Nan family.
Good afternoon.
So great to see everyone. Used to seeing folks on Saturday morning at the House of Justice. It's good to be out and about in the great borough of Manhattan, and great to welcome all those coming from around the country. Want to start by thanking Reverend Sharpton for his leadership across the years, for his mentorship, and perhaps most personally to me for his words here today. I'm gratified and inspired by them. Also want to thank Dr. Richardson. Want to thank my sisters, Jennifer Jones Austin and Ashley and Dominique Sharpton. And of course, want to thank our brother in the bar, Attorney Michael Hardy. So I told Brother Hardy I'm going to be brief because I'm going at the end here, and I don't want to hold folks too long, but there are a few points I just wanted to underscore, many of which have been said by my colleagues. But I like the way Reverend Sharpton has framed this, and many of the other folks who've spoken have framed this as safety and fairness together. And our friend from Philadelphia talking about the research showing how the fairness can promote the safety. I want to underscore that as well. But as Reverend Sharpton was speaking, I started to think about how complex our communities are, how we bear the brunt of all of this, right? The underinvestment, the crime, the police accountability challenges. And I just started thinking about why I got into this work. So, you know, before I turned 21, I had a gun pointed at me 6 times. 3 by police officers, but 3 by people who weren't police officers. And I went to law school with that puzzle in my mind. How is it that I could be so unsafe in my own community, both traditional public safety, those who weren't police officers, and then police accountability challenges. And we know in many ways that's the complexity of our neighborhoods, right? The person who on Monday is a witness, on Wednesday may be the victim, and on Friday may be the defendant. It's all combined. And so we've got to approach it with that complexity, and that's sort of been my life story and what I bring to this work. So, you know, part of the story is driving my work on gun violence, right? When I was growing up, I had a semi-automatic weapon pointed to my head, a homicide victim on my doorstep, a knife to my neck, right? So I don't want anyone else to feel the trauma or the secondary trauma. You go home and you tell your mother that that's trauma for her. I don't want anyone to feel that trauma. So public safety is top of my list. It's what I go to sleep thinking about, what I wake up thinking about. But also, and I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that someone else has had this experience in this room, I've also got the call in the middle of the night that you got to post bail. And I don't mean when I was a defense lawyer. I mean as a family member, right? Loved one calls and says, hey, you got to get up and answer the call. I've had that, and I know that trauma and how that affects families. I've had a loved one return to my home after incarceration and sleep on my couch for a year. So it's one thing to do reentry work. I've done that in the courtroom. It's another thing to wake up and look a loved one in the eye as he's going out looking for jobs that he's qualified for but can't because of his record. So I'm the new kid on the block. But I'm bringing all that experience to the Manhattan DA's office and just wanted to talk about a few of our priorities. We've talked about gun violence, and that is the number one thing. I grew up in Central Harlem, started out a few blocks from the House of Justice on 145th Street, and the uptick in gun violence in this borough has been throughout the borough, but really has been felt up in Harlem. And I want to respectfully submit to you that gun violence is a racial justice issue. Black boys and black men ages 15 to 35 are 20 times more likely to die by gun homicide than white men and boys. Let me just say that again. Black boys and men 15 to 35, 20 times more likely to die by gun homicide. These are the unsolved homicides that were talked about earlier. That's a racial justice issue. It's a public safety issue, of course. It's an accountability issue, of course. But it's a racial justice issue. And so we're hard at work in the Manhattan DA's office. One of the first things I did when I came into office was appoint an executive whose job is gun violence prevention. We're doing gun cases every single day of the week, but I wanted someone who was thinking about that holistically. And he's thinking about ghost guns. He's thinking about gun tracing. He's thinking about the iron pipeline. He's also thinking about when we take down organizations that are using guns to do harm, about the people who are adjacent to that conduct, and saying, what can we do to prevent them from being in the next indictment, right? So we got to do both at the same time. And I may have missed it, I don't know if anyone else said it, it's something that we don't talk about a lot in our communities, but we need to, is domestic violence. It has also increased during the pandemic with people sometimes having to shelter with someone doing them harm. And so that's also a top priority. And the intersection of guns and domestic violence is a particular concern for me. So as we look to get guns off the street, we're certainly looking to the homicides and the shootings, but also we're trying to get guns out of the hands of anyone with a history or indication of domestic violence. So that's the top priority in my office. I could sit down there now because that's a lot, and that's the first and last thing I think about each and every day. I wanted to talk about a couple of other things we're doing. We are, following in the traditions of other offices. We've started a conviction integrity unit. Started this morning off announcing our new head of that unit, training the office on the objective and independent lookbacks we're going to be doing. Have a vibrant police accountability unit. We have 3 convictions this year so far for police accountability issues, again, following the work that some of my colleagues have done. And on diversion, we are reimagining the office and restructuring it. I think probably the most far-reaching restructure of the Manhattan DA's office in generations, to embed within our main structure diversion. So that means diversion is not off to the side in a separate unit. It means on every single case, we're thinking about, is this a case that we can divert, and trying to do it based on the data at the earliest possible moment, because we know when we do that, the efficacy rises. So those are our priorities, but what I also wanted to mention, because I think it is so fundamentally important, is the ways we're planning to use the law affirmatively on behalf of those who have for far too long been marginalized. So I'm very excited that this week I promoted someone and made that person the head of our new Immigrant Affairs Unit. We know that folks, when times are trying, you can clap for that, right? And we know that a lot of members of the diaspora, we are immigrants too, right? And so we've seen scams increase, and we want to support those, whether it's financial scams or otherwise. I also, and Brother Hardy talked about my time at the Attorney General's office, some of the work that I'm proudest of there is the work that we did on behalf of workers. So affirmatively using the criminal law to hold employers accountable who are cheating workers out of a fair wage. We have doubled down on that work, and I'm looking forward to results. And then lastly, and I assume this is an issue around the country. It's certainly an issue in New York with a moratorium on our evictions. Using the criminal law on behalf of tenants who are harassed out of their homes. So I promised Brother Hardy I was going to be shorter than I was. I don't know if I've used my allotted time, but if you all indulge me, I appreciate it. It is always a joy, a pleasure, and a privilege to be with the NAN family. So I thank you so much and look forward to working together, because safety and fairness is all of our work. Look forward to working together for the years to come. Thank you.
All right, let's give a tremendous hand to all of our district attorneys who are with us today. And I don't know if we've got time for questions at all. Do we? I'm asking the people that are running the convention. All right. So
I have a microphone, Attorney Hardy.
okay.
We're going to have a one
right.
line in the aisle like earlier, please.
All right. So here's what we're going to do, though, and I think I had spoken to Megan. You know, I want to, you don't make too long of a line, 'cause we're only taking a couple of questions. So
Just give them all our email addresses. They could give them our email addresses.
all right. So very quickly, what I want to do, though, is here at National Action Network, and you heard many of the district attorneys, I need you to quiet down. Many of the district attorneys obviously spoke about two parts of our community that's really very important, and in many cases that's our youth and our seniors. And in National Action Network, we have a tremendous, excuse me, and yeah, we shouldn't have people approaching the dais like that. At National Action Network, we have a youth huddle, which was founded by Ashley Sharpton and Dominique Sharpton. And I know that we had some of our huddle representatives here, so I want the huddle representatives to ask the first question.
Joe Gonzalez.
Well, he's not a huddle representative.
Yes, my question, my name is Joe Gonzalez.
Time out. I want the young lady from Huddle to ask the first question.
Got it. I'll hold the mic.
Hello, my name's Aaliyah. I'm part of Youth Huddle. So the first question I have is, well, we've been talking a lot about how the communities that are not safe are not the communities with the most resources. They're the communities with no jobs, less resources. So knowing that, how do we move forward with prosecuting young people like 16 and 17-year-olds? How do we move forward with prosecuting them and making it more restorative rather than just punitive? They get caught with a gun, they get sent to jail, they stay in jail, you throwing them in jail and locking away the key. How do we move forward with making sure that if we are holding them accountable and putting them in jail, that when they get out, they aren't using a gun. When they get out, they have the resources to flourish so the community can be safer.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody want to take a stab? District Attorney Clark.
Is this on? Okay. Thank you for that question. Aaliyah, right? It is? Yes. Aaliyah, thank you. Look, I talked to you about this a little bit too. Look, every kid that has a gun is not necessarily a bad kid, and I know that. We have to look at the individual when they come before us. We got to do all we can to prevent them from coming into the system in the first place. And that's why I talked about working with the city, working with the mayor, working with our community-based organizations, the clergy, to put the resources and the programs in the community so we give them choices against violence, giving them the counseling that they need. A lot of these kids are traumatized. They've seen their older brothers shot or mothers or somebody shot and killed. They live in buildings or communities where gang violence is there, and if they don't join, that they may become the victims themselves. So we have to look at why did they pick up that gun in the first place. And every kid that picks up a gun has not pulled the trigger, at least not yet. So when we get them, at least my approach is this. When I have them in the youth part in the criminal court, I have a community justice bureau that looks at that individual, not only the facts of the case, because the police are going to bring the case, and if there's probable cause to arrest, if there's probable cause to indict, we may or may not do that. But what I'm teaching my assistants to do first and foremost is to look at that individual, look at that kid, and find out why are they here, how did they get there. Okay. And when you look at the root causes as to how that particular kid gets there, then you can figure out what justice looks like for that kid. So it may be dropping the charges. It may be putting them in a diversion program. It may be getting them a job. It may be getting them mental health services that they need. There's a lot of possibilities, but as the DA, I have the discretion to do that. So even though the law says I could indict them and they could go to jail for X amount of years, that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen to them. So I look at every individual kid, and look, let's face it, some of them can be saved, and I hate to say it, some of them is too late. Some of them is too late. But that still doesn't mean that they should go to jail for the rest of their lives. That means that we do what we have to do to hold them accountable, whatever that looks like, and also know that that same kid has to return back to our community, because where else are they going to go? So we have to give them the tools that even when they come back into the community, that we give them the resources and tools that they need to be successful so that they don't re-offend again. So that's how I approach it.
All right. District Attorney Katz, did you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, in a perfect world, a teenager or nobody, anybody doesn't pick up a gun, right? And that's what we're working towards. And I think you have to look at each case separately. But we do have a lot of youth programs and internships. You know, we have summer internships for high school kids. We have Explorer programs. We want to make sure that they have some trust in the criminal justice system, because I think that's also extremely an important part of this. We do gun buybacks. We work with our clergy. We got 400 guns off the streets since I have been the district attorney at Queens County. And I know that's a controversial topic as far as gun buybacks, because we're giving kids $200. Darcel Clark started giving kids iPads, so I had to up my game in Queens County. And I had to up my game. So you know what? That can be as controversial as we want, but that's 400 guns that are never going to shoot anybody on the streets of Queens County. So I think it's important to not only, you know, so you have the jobs, workforce development, internship programs, gun buybacks. It is not a perfect answer, but it is a way to keep people out of the criminal justice system.
All right. We're going to take the next question. We have another youth huddle member, and we want to take his question.
Hello, guys. My name is Usman Diallo, and after hearing the panelists, it's like we know where the guns are coming from. We speak about the iron pipeline, but the message that's been coming out recently is about rolling back on bail reform, having legislation that's raised the age. So my question is, why can't we have a firmer stance on guns, have restrict how people can get guns, and introduce legislation that requires you to have background checks and things of that nature? And if we know they're coming from the iron pipeline, why aren't we attacking the iron pipeline? Why aren't we just attacking youth and black and brown individuals?
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone want to address that at all?
We are addressing the iron pipeline as well. When we talk about what we're doing, there's a wide range of how we're attacking this. It's not just the prosecution. I think that's the point that we're trying to make. So we're working with our law enforcement partners in the federal government to get the laws changed. But, you know, have you seen Congress lately? Like, a lot of stuff is not getting done. So when you talk about passing laws, we're all in favor of that, and it has to be on the federal side. But not a lot of things are happening in that area. You have mass shootings that people get all upset, and rightfully so. The school shootings are bad, but we have these shootings and killings in our neighborhood every single day, and I don't see the outrage then. So what we have to do is attack the iron pipeline. We're doing that, but we're doing all these other things as well as the prevention, the programs, and everything else.
All right, District Attorney Krasner, did you want to say something?
First of all, I want to thank you for the question. It's a really important question. When I see a young person ask that question, it gives me hope, because I know that my generation has not fixed it, all right? This is how deep the problem we face is and why it's so important. There are more guns than people in the United States, and there's a pretty good argument that it is the United States of guns. It is not the United States of people. When we look at other countries where they have been sensible about gun regulation, I'll just give you one. They have 1/9 the level of homicides, and they have 1/9 the level of incarceration. The country I'm talking about is modern Germany, which is a country absolutely soaked in blood, violence, and racism. Yet, they have 1/9 the level of homicide, 1/9 the level of incarceration, and a part of that is that they have appropriate gun regulation. The difficulty we have, and yes, we have to attack it every way we can, is according to data in Philadelphia, for every gun that is taken off the street, there are either 3 or 2, depending on the source, that are sold through a gun shop, and that's not the backdoor sales. It is not the truth that by getting X guns off the street, we're actually reducing the number of guns. The number of guns, unfortunately, just keeps going up, and there are plenty of legitimate buyers, meaning they're permitted to buy it, who are selling them out the back door to people, and they're making money off of it. So it is a monumental problem. It's made worse by the fact that we already have more guns than we have people in the United States. We have to take it on from every different direction, but it is going to require the federal government not to be bought and sold by the National Rifle Association.
Yep.
All right.
You get rid of guns by lowering the supply and lowering the demand. And in the meantime, you need to put serial numbers on every single part of a gun that is ever created. And the federal government has to do that. We have to make sure that every piece of a gun can be identified. You know, AG Tish James has been so vocal and so eloquent in her advocacy of making sure that manufacturers are held liable for the atrocities of the guns that they create, but also the serial numbers will go a long way in making sure that every part of that gun, you can't just take apart a gun and then nobody's liable. And so I think that is a very important part of what we need to do as a country.
All right. We're going to take 2 more questions. One, again, will be from our youth huddle. I think Brother Dolivi, who's got the next question?
Felivi. Hello, my name is Felivi. I'm a sophomore business major from Morehouse College. My question, thank you. My question for you is, what does police reform mean to you? For a lot of us youth, we were outside last year protesting against police violence, so we really want to understand what a lot of y'all talking about. What we're going to be doing police reform. What does it specifically mean for your office? Thank you.
Okay. Anybody want to start?
I'm happy to do it. I've been taking over.
I'm happy.
Alvin?
Okay. So you know, we, as Brother Hardy said, you know, when I was at the Attorney General's office, I led a statewide effort investigating deaths caused by police conduct. So the work is very, very important to me, and one of the first things I did was have the unit report directly to me. So I've got a police accountability unit. We're in just had 3 months ended. We've had 3 convictions already, 2 after trial for police integrity matters. So for me, it means, you know, 1 standard of justice for everyone. It means 2 of our convictions were around sort of integrity issues in terms of taking money. So it's not just the force cases, it's taking money, and one of them was for unlawful use of force. So it's a top priority. The unit reports directly to me. It's very active. I can't talk about things in the pipeline, obviously, but specifically, that would say that's the number 1. But also, it's sort of throughout the office. So it's you know, making sure that the cases that go forward, we are making sure that the stops were lawful. We're not going to do cases where the stop wasn't lawful. Making sure that we're holding our partners accountable. But first and foremost, to me, it's the use of force cases that we're actively investigating and holding accountable, just like we are holding other actors in the system accountable.
All right.
Do you want us each to answer? It's fine.
Anybody else, or? All right. All right, I'm going to go to our last question. Now, what I'm going to do, because they are an important part of NAN, and we're a national organization, so I want to get one question from our national audience. But Victor Pate, who Reverend Sharpton mentioned earlier, heads up our Second Chance program here. In fact, District Attorney Clark participated on one of the Second Chance panels at one of our conventions. And so I wanted Victor Pate and Brenda Coles, who's from Richmond, Virginia, to ask the last question. And they're both part of the Second Chance Committee.
Thank you for having this, Attorney Hardy. This is a great panel. First, I want to say something. You would never see this in Virginia. I want to salute you for being here, because this is something you would never see in the state of Virginia. We have a major issue there and then seeing you all in the capacity of being here and speaking to everyone, I can't tell you how filled I am. I want to direct my question to District Attorney Keisner, because he is in Pennsylvania, which is a Commonwealth state. We have a lot of issues with people out of New York and the northern states that are incarcerated in the state of Virginia. And unfortunately, people think that because they are from New York, the rules and the laws work the same. Commonwealth states are completely different. Attorney Keisner, you said a few things earlier that I certainly understand, and what you were saying when it comes to when the judges make a decision based on personal or trying to make a point. Could you please explain to the audience a little bit more about the way the Commonwealth will work completely different than what New York and what people in the New York area may understand, because you have several Commonwealth states and people get hung up in those Commonwealth laws and they can't get out.
Thank you, Brenda Cole, Richmond, Virginia.
All right, thank you so much for the question, but I have some good news for you, which is that good things are coming to Virginia. You have a district attorney in Fairfax County, Virginia.
We need you to keep it down, all right.
The good news is that you have a district attorney in Fairfax County, Virginia, whose name is Parisa Degani Tafti, who spent her career fighting the death penalty, and she was nevertheless, believe it or not, in Fairfax County, Virginia, elected the district attorney there some years ago. So reform is coming, and it is coming everywhere. And God bless Virginia for the good things that are happening there as well. It was not so long ago that there was really one progressive prosecutor you could point to in the state of Georgia. There is now a club. It's about 8 or 9, and that has come about in just the last 2 years. So please don't give up hope that wonderful things are coming. Now, with reference to your question, I can tell you that one of the differences between a Commonwealth state and a state that is not a Commonwealth is that when a prosecutor stands up in front of the court at the beginning of a trial, in a state that is a Commonwealth state, they say, Your Honor, this is Frank Jones. I'm the attorney for the Commonwealth. But in the other states, the usual way that this is done, in a non-Commonwealth state, you say, my name is so-and-so, and I am for the people. I am here for the people. If anything, the notion of a Commonwealth should make it even more about the commons, should make it more about all of us, should make it more about all of us as people. And sadly, that has not been the tradition in many ways. There's certainly a lot of technicality state to state, but I would like to think even in the Commonwealths, even where the laws get a little hinky, that what prosecutors are doing, and the ones we want, the ones we need, is for the people.
All right. All right. Well, let's give a big hand. District Attorney Alvin Bragg, District Attorney Michael McMahon, District Attorney Melinda Katz, District Attorney Larry Krasner, District Attorney Darcel Clark, and District Attorney Eric Gonzalez. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank all of you. God bless you. And you know we have our revival tonight, so stay tuned, and we'll see you here tonight and tomorrow.